Hi everyone, I'm Chef Nicholas Lodge and welcome to this part 2 of using my Ultimate Succulent Mold by Katie Sue Designs. I'm excited in the second part to continue from the first video to show you two other varieties of succulents. That is sort of the bead or pearl style succulent. And then I'm going to go on to show you how to do some little miniature ones which are really beautiful to do in craft, but also, for example, using on macarons, on different types of pastries, like for example cupcakes, petit fours, things like that. So you can make those edible or a craft application. So let's get started. So in video 1, I showed how to make the 3 larger succulents or style of succulents that are in the mold. That is going to be the spoon style succulent, where I showed obviously how to make 3 different size variations, which you can do with all of the succulents. Then how to make the elongated style, and then the pointed style succulent. Now, probably if you haven't watched video 1, I would suggest watch that first, because in that video I really talk a lot about the mold initially, and then obviously show how to do these type of succulents. In the second part that you're watching now, I'm going to show you how to do the bead succulent, or sometimes known as like string of pearls, and think of like a strand of pearls. And I'm going to be using these 5 cavities which are at the top of the mold, showing you how to make these. And these will make this sort of beaded style. So these will make obviously 5 different sizes, like almost a pea or a bead on a wire, and how to finish those off. And then I will be going on to show you the elongated, the sort of like the drop pearl, which is an elongated sort of, but it's like a pearl, like if you think of drop pearl earrings. I'll be showing you how to make this. And then I'll be finishing up this second video by showing you actually how to use some of the elements that I didn't use on the first video, this little tiny part here and this part here, and showing you how to make some little mini succulents, which, as I just said in the introduction, you can use for craft projects, but also when we think about edible items, like for example macarons, on little petit fours, on cookies, on mini cupcakes, entremets, lots of different things we can use these for. And I'm going to show you how to make those at the end of this video. And then remember, the third video is going to focus on actually using the succulents, how to put them onto cakes, and how to, as I said, decorate the little confections and things with the succulents. So let's get started. So now we're going to do the first variety, which is going to be of a bead succulent. And as I said, this sometimes is called a string of pearls. Some people call this variety string of pearls. And of course, there are varieties, lots of different varieties in this style. But basically, it is like either balls or obviously the drop pearl shapes, which are in different sizes in this mold. This makes 5 different sizes. And this is really nice hanging down the side of a cake, or in an arrangement on top of a cake, or if you're doing this in air drying clay, to have these as a beautiful sort of hanging down as an arrangement. So it's a really nice way to balance. So if you were going to make air drying clay succulents in a pot or a container, this will look nice sort of trailing out of the pot, sort of hanging down. Now, I created these in lime green, a pale lime green color. So as I talked about in the first video, I use Mylar bags, usually to store my paste in. So this is just white paste, all right? And so I'm using here 25 grams or a number 14, all right? So 25 grams on a digital scale or a number 14 on your size guide, all right, will be sufficient to make, and then you'll have some over, but this will be sufficient to make what I'm going to show you as far as number of components. Now, when I colored this, I just used a sort of a lime green, an electric green. There are many different companies all over the world that do gel and paste colors. So most of them are going to sell like a lime green, electric green. If you don't, you can also just use green and yellow, and that will give us sort of a lime green. So I'm going to do like a pale lime green. Now, if you're doing this in air drying clay, what I would recommend you do is use the measuring mold. This is the Katie Sue measuring mold that I did the leaflet for, and have a video on this. But so you can watch the full video. So if you make up a batch of lime green, so make a custom lime green in the measuring mold, and then lighten with an extra number 1. So if you make the, which is basically number 1 white, number 4 green, number 4 yellow, that will make this customized lime green. Then you actually just add another number 1 white, and that will take it down to a paler lime green. Okay, and that's a really good way to make that. And that's of course using the pre-colored hardy clays. Anyway, when we make the succulent, first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover the wires So we're going to cover, now I'm giving you specific numbers of components that I'm going to show you. And so I'm basing this on using 6 wires. Now these are 30 gauge wires. It doesn't matter whether they are white or green wires. And they're going to be covered with some 1/4 width floral tape. So we've got some 1/4 width tape here. And you can cut that in a cutter or obviously with a pair of scissors. We want to use 1/4 width tape because it won't add a lot of bulk to this. And the reason why we're going to cover this wire, because sometimes in classes, students ask me, well, why wouldn't you just use green wire? The thing is that the green wire is a different color to the green tape. So this means when we actually wire all the components together with the same color tape, all of the stem is going to be a uniform color. All right. And also when you dust color on stems as well, it takes on the floral tape, whereas if you just dust on the wire, it doesn't really stay put. Now we're going to cover, and usually the easiest thing to do here is just start a little bit past the end of the wire and then just go down. And remember, you're going to stretch and keep tension on your tape. And you're going to go just down to the bottom. This is something you can sit and watch TV or whatever and do. And it's easy to prepare these. So just cover that to the bottom. And you just continue with another 5. So we now have 6 wires. All right, and what I'm going to do is just going to make the wires sort of fairly level. So the ends are fairly level here. And then because we've started a floral tape just before just after the end, usually I just trim that little tiny bit off. Okay, so you just trim that little bit off both ends. You do the same the other end, and then just get rid of those wires. And then we're going to cut the wires in half. So using our scissors, going to cut. Now these are just school scissors, all right, because this is really thin wire, the thinnest wire we mostly use. And you're going to cut them in half, and then each half you'll cut into 3. All right, just approximately. And then you're going to do the same on the other end here. So just cut them in thirds. Now actually the first and second succulent I will be showing you both have the same number of wires, and they're both the same type of wires. All right, now once we've done that, we're going to make small 5mm open hooks on the wires, 3 at a time. Now, so you're going to take 3 wires at a time, all right, just make them level. And I'm going to use my pliers, all right, and I want to just sort of make about a 5mm hook on the end. So we're just going to hold that. So it wants to be about 5mm. All right, so you would just see this is a 5mm, all right, which is a little bit obviously here, all right, so it's about the E on the size guide, so 5mm, and it's easier to do this in millimeters, all right, and then these ones are going to just sort of be an open hook. They don't want to be too closed, because when we do the drop pearl one, we're going to make more of a squashed hook, all right, so they just want to be like this. And a little tip I shared in video 1, I use a Petal little magnet. It's a great way to put your wires so you don't lose them. They won't fall off the table when I teach. That's how I do. All my students have a little magnet, and it's easy for them to do. So just going to do about 5mm hooks, and just going to hook those over. Okay, so they don't want to be too tight, all right? And that will be your hooks. So obviously you're going to hook all 36 of these wires, and then you have 36, and we'll actually be making a total of combined 35. So you'll actually have 1 wire over at the end, all right? So that's the first step. So we've got our wire prepped. Next thing we're going to do is going to measure off the balls of paste. Now, usually I use a little, like a silicone mat or then a little container. This is just a little cup, shot glass, but a little plastic container. That just is good to store your paste underneath. Now we're going to measure, for the first, we're going to measure 5 number 5 balls of paste, all right? And take out your paste there. You can just take out a little bit to start off with. And then we're going to measure 5 number 5 small balls of paste, all right? So that means that it's going to be the number 5 hole. And as I said, in video 1, I went obviously into a little bit more detail on the size guide. So this is really just, as I said, a follow-on to video 1. So you see that wants to just go through the hole, all right? So that's your, as I said, your first one. And we want to make 5 of those. So then what you would do is you'd measure another 4 balls of paste the same size. And then once you've got the 5 balls of paste there, you just put them under the little pot. And I would do the small, then the medium, then the large, and then the extra large and the extra, extra large, because they're each different sizes. Because if you make the 35 balls of paste, you're going to get confused with the sizes, and plus also they could potentially dry out. All right, so you usually just sort of make them, custom make them to go. So we're going to take one and roll it into a short sausage and press vertically into the smallest open hole at the top of the mold. And so you're going to take your mold here. So this is going to be the smallest size there. So you can see here on the mold there are 5 cavities, and these are divided into sort of 5 sort of segments, all right? So sorry, it's a 6 segments, so it looks a little bit like, as I said, so there's 6 lines in there. And this is the small, medium, the large, and extra, extra large. Now remember on video 1, I did the same, you know, this is small, medium, large, extra large, small, medium, large, extra large, extra large. So the thing is that's the way I've sort of given the sizes. So we're going to take your paste. Now usually when you take each little bit of paste, you're going to just what we call condition it. So I work a little bit of vegetable fat, some shortening into it. All right. And then we're going to take this. If your paste feels a bit sticky, you can use just a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers. I've got this is just a little, white knee-high or pantyhose, a little stocking. And that's what I keep my cornstarch in. So we're going to roll that into a little sausage. All right. So you're just going to roll it into a slight sausage. All right. Just a short sausage there. Because when you then press that in, you get a little bit more impact. Now the veining on this mold is going to be heavier as it goes down. So because in real life, they would have very subtle veining and it would become a little bit more prominent and dominant on. So like, for example, the veining in this big one is heavier than this first one. And that's done to really give the natural effect that they would have. So you're just going to lay that into the mold vertically. And then you're going to push that in with your finger. And this paste amount will sort of fill the mold or just slightly below the rim of the mold, all right? So we're going to press that in with your finger, then brush glue over the length of the hook, press in and then flex the mold twice. So we're going to take your glue. Now remember, glue can relate to, obviously, with air drying clay. This would relate to your air drying clay. Would be your PVA glue, your school glue. Obviously for sugar, you can use egg white for classic gum paste, or edible glue, or flexi glue for flexi paste. So just put a little bit of glue over that. Just keep your brush in a wet towel. So then what we're going to do is going to so brush glue over the hook and then press into the mold. Now, when you do that, if you hold the end of the wire like that, what's going to happen is, because the wire is quite thin, it's going to bend. So you hold sort of towards the bottom there. And also remember, because the hook is going to be sort of, when you put it in, you want the wire, where the wire goes down, that wants to be the sort of central point. All right. So just push that in just a little way. All right. This won't completely disappear on the smaller ones. Then you're going to just lift your mold up and you want to flex your mold and you flex your mold. So you see I press from the side and I put my fingers in the 2 side holes and just open up the mold. So that will give you see like the little buds. It looks like a little, almost a cherry blossom bud. And then you're going to turn, so you're going to turn this upside down and think of a crab or a lobster, okay? You're going to just use a little bit of, you see what I'm doing, as I'm just using my thumb and finger, just molding around the bottom of that, all right? So you're just securing the wire, you see? But so you hold it very gently here, and you see how you're just molding it around, all right? And it will be sort of quite round in shape. You're not really lengthening that down, and that will give you your little tiny bud. Now, your little small part. So then we're gonna use crate foam. This is crate or convoluted foam. So what I do is I'm going to put them into there, all right? And so you're going to do them, and you'll need several pieces of this. You can buy this also in big sheets as well. And of course, you don't have to do this all at the same time, but we're going to be making a total of 5 of those, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are the small. And then we're going to move on to the medium, all right? And so what we're doing is we're doing 5 small, 6 medium, 7 large, 8 extra large, and 9 extra extra large. So we're just going to do it so it's easy to remember. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So then we're going to move on to, now you can also, when you're doing this, you can also use sort of at the back of this, all right, you can use your, if you have any little area where you hook, you can use your companion tool. You can smooth that. And remember, when you're working with air drying clay or flexi paste, you can also just dip your finger in water and you can just use a little wet on your fingers and that will just smooth the back as well. All right, so you can just use, now you can't do that on regular sugar-based paste because what will happen is it will dissolve it, but flexi paste is starch-based, so it works very similar, like think of it an edible version of obviously the air drying clay, so you can actually, as I said, use a wet finger and just would lay that into your foam. All right, but that, as I said, is how you would do the small one. Now, when we move on to the medium, we're going to use 6 number 5. All right, so I've already measured my little balls of paste off. So we've got there, so we've gone 6 number 5. Now this will be just a regular size paste. All right, so this is a regular number 5. Now, of course, when you do this for a cake or a project, you can do whatever size you want to make this, all right? So this is going to go on, so we have about 1/3 below, 2/3 above. Again, we're just going to just condition that, make it into a little ball. There, make it into a little sausage. All right, and then this is going to go into now the next hole. Now, if you should make the ball of paste bigger than the mold, if you make it the correct size, it will fit in the mold or slightly below the surface. But remember, as I showed also on the first video, what you can do is just use your Flexi Scraper and you can just take off the excess. When we do actually the drop pearl, you'll see me use this to trim up on the drop pearl, okay? But just trim that up level. So then you would just take your, so showing you that again. Now you can also, as well as you can brush or can also dip your hook in, but usually it's easier to brush. And remember, you want to brush this on the length of the whole of the hook. All right, so remember that goes into the mold. All right, and then I'm going to lift the mold up. I usually found it's easier to do that. You're just going to flex it that way, and then you see I just put my fingers in the side holes and just flex it. So it pushes the paste around. You're going to get this sort of flat top. Open out the mold, all right? And then you're just going to put a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers. So hold it upside down. So you see what I'm doing is I'm taking the flat part and I'm sort of bringing it towards the center, all right? So you see how I'm just going to bring that around. So remember, the hook will disappear into there. And then you can just take your, you can just use your little companion tool just to smooth that off. So they look almost like little peas, all right? And this will be the medium one. Now then you would move on to the large. You would use a number 6 small. So just referencing the sizes. So the large one, so remember the medium, we did 6 of those. So we now would make, so now we're going to make the large, which we're making 7 of. All right, so that's going to be, this is going to be a number, so the medium is number 5, and then this is going to be a number 6 small. So you see that's just going to go through the hole there. All right, so that will be a number 6. So we'd make obviously 7 of those. And then for the extra large, all right, so for the extra large, we're going to use 8 of those. That's going to be number 6 large. Now remember, in video 1 I talked about this. When we talk about a 6 large, which you don't do very often, what it means, instead of traditionally 1/3 below, 3/4 above, you only have 1/4 below and 3/4 above. So it's a no, but you see it's still a lot smaller than a number 7 small, okay? So as I said, sometimes in certain projects I use small size goes through the hole, regular size 1/3 below, 2/3 above, and then a large size will be 1/4 below, 3/4 above. So we'd make, and then for the extra large, is the bigger size one, we're going to, for that one there, we're going to be using, so for the extra large, that will be a 6 large, okay? So those are your sizes. So anyway, we're going to, so this will be your 6 large size, all right? So those will be, so this is going to be pressed into the mold. So I'll just show you this largest size one. So this is a 6 large, 1/4 below, 3/4 above. All right. And you just roll that into a sausage. Usually for this, some of the cavities in video 1, I used a little bit of vegetable fat, some shortening into there. And you will see I also do that for the drop pearl. It depends on what you're doing, but often the vegetable fat or shortening, what it helps to do is to hold the paste in place. Like when I did, for example, the pointed succulent, I used that. But for here, it's a basic shape. You don't have to do that. We're just going to press that in. You see that feels that level. And then you're going to take your glue here. And again, just going to press that in there. All right, so it goes into so the wire part is in the middle here. And then remember, lift it up, flex this one way and flex the other way. See, so you're almost going to get like a sort of slight square. It's a little bit easier to see on there. Remember, open up the mold so that releases it. All right, and then what you're going to do is you're going to sort of bring the outside of the mold around. Use a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers. So you see I'm just supporting that. And this is going to give you your shape, all right? And then you can just use your companion tool. You can just roll. So you see I'm just rolling with the companion tool. And remember, when you're doing this with air drying clay or a flexi paste, you can even put a little bit of water on that as well. All right, so it really depends what medium you're working with. And that will give you your little, this will be the bigger size. This is the extra, extra large. All right, so as you can see, just bringing those into camera. So we have, so these are the 5 small. These are the 6 medium. These are the 7 large. These are the 8 extra large. And then these are the 9 extra, extra large, all right? Now this is gonna be used to make a sort of a longer and a slightly shorter spray. So there's a total of 35 there, all right? Remember, you will have 1 wire left over. But of course, the number of components you do is totally up to you. I've just done this so it's easier to think of, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all right? So those are made. Now, those next we're going to obviously go dry these. You could again put this in a food dehydrator. The convoluted foam sits fine in the food dehydrator on the shelves. And then you could just put it in the food dehydrator for about 90 minutes and they'll be ready to put together. Or you could leave these 2 or 3 hours to dry at room temperature. Remember, air drying clay pretty much would have been 30 minutes. You could put this together and color them with air drying clay. So I said, coming up is going to be, the next step is going to be the assembly and then the coloring. So now for the assembly. So in video 1, all of the components were colored and then assembled. Here we're going to assemble then color because it's more basic shape and things and not so detailed. So we're going to separate. So I'm going to show you like 2, a longer and a slightly shorter strand. So I'm going to use, going to show the long one first. So we have 3 small, 3 medium, 4 large, 5 extra large, and 5 extra, extra large. So I'm just taking out obviously the sizes and put them in little groupings. So 3, 3, 4, 5, and 5, okay? But of course you can do any, if you're making say 100 of each, you can have any sort of combination. Now we're going to start off with a 28 gauge wire. It doesn't matter whether you use a green or a white wire. This is going to be quite soft, all right, because we want to have, the end of this wants to be quite soft, all right, in being able to bend it to shape to give it that nice organic look, because when they grow, they almost look like a string of pearls coming out of a flower pot or things. So we don't want this to be too stiff looking. So we're going to use a 28 gauge. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take 2, all right, but 2 of my small ones. You don't have to use tweezers here, and you have fairly short stems. You have about a 2 centimeter, about 3/4 of an inch or so in this part here. But then with the little stems that come off, there's literally just about 5, 6 millimeters. All right. Now at that point there, what I will do is I will add the 28 gauge wire. So at this intersection where the 2, like the slightly longer one and the shorter one meet, you're going to then just have that. And this one could go to the right or to the left. There's no sort of set way this has to go together. I'm going to start off with my 1/4 width floral tape. So with 1/4 width floral tape, Just got to go around a couple of times, and then we will take another small one. So you see there's just going to be a little bit of stem showing. So you can see just a small amount of stem showing. They're going to come around. And you can sort of, they don't have to be exactly uniform, and you can leave like little gaps. So you can sort of, for example, come up a little way. And I will put in then then we're going to put in the medium one. And you can just put the medium one, come up a little way. And then you could, for example, do group of 2. So it's usually easier just to sort of like, when you do them in groups, you can put them together like this. You see how I can just hold them. But this, as I said, is, if you can see any of the wire underneath, you can just tape over that. But we're using 1/4 width tape so it doesn't leave too much bulk, all right? So you see how you get a natural, because on flowers like Lily of the Valley and flowers like that, we often are more formal, to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. Whereas you can have like little gaps here, you know, so they don't have to be exactly all in the same position, all right? And then again, I'm gonna do just one of those. These are obviously now the medium ones. I'm going to have another one of those. So that will come to here. They said they don't want to be too formal, and you have that nice sort of look. And then I will do a group of 2 medium ones here. And also when they grow, they are sort of 3-dimensional. So it depends on how it's going to be viewed. Like if, for example, you had a wedding cake, which we're going to talk about in video number 3, but it was sort of going down the side of a wedding cake where it's sitting against the side of the cake, on the side of the wedding cake. Of course, you can have everything pretty much, as I said, more flat here. And if you were doing this in a stand-up arrangement where it's going to be trailing out of a vase on top of a cake, or in a air drying clay project, then you can make these, as I said, 3-dimensional. All right, so really that's up to you a little bit. Of that's going to depend on how it's going to be viewed. All right, and of course they're very easy to move around when you get to this. All right, and then we're just going to continue just down a little bit further. So we then have, obviously now we're moving on to the large. Again, I'm going to do, just sort of separate those. Large, and I'll have another. Then I'm going to do two large, and then a single large. So you're sort of dividing them into either single pearls, beads, or obviously you're going to do this one here. So this is the, and then at this point, on this long one, you will sort of be towards the sort of the end of that wire. And of course, it's quite a soft wire, but we want it like that so that obviously the end part is going to have that sort of natural look to it. All right. You can see you get to there. Now at that point, we're going to take a 24 gauge wire, which is just a little bit stronger. So before you start putting in the extra large size ones, we will add a 24 gauge wire. So that's going to give just a little bit of strength to the end part. So the end part is very sort of organic. You see how it sort of hangs, will almost like a sort of wiggle because of the weight of it. And as I said, now we're going to put in the single, and these are going to be the last ones that we will make. And then this will be the second one. And I'm going to do this one here. But of course, it depends on the project you're doing, because if, for example, you're doing this in air drying a clay, and you had, let's say, a 4-inch container, like maybe a square cube, because often you see succulents using more contemporary, a little wooden cube or a ceramic cube or something, a vase, and it was only 10 centimeters or 4 inches high. You don't really want this hanging down onto the table, so you probably would make it a little bit shorter, so obviously it hangs within the arrangement and the container size. So you can, of course, depending on how they're going to be used. And then here, I'm going to put the last couple here. All right, and I'm just going to tape down here. And when you get to that point, you can finish off the end part of this with half width tape. So when you get the last of the extra large in, you can almost sort of hang that and just sort of bring your tape, because this will, let's say, wiggle around a little bit. All right. And so you can sort of move things around so they have that nice, you know, sort of, as I said, an organic sort of feel to them. So they just sort of look like nice natural. All right. Now, of course, these can be done in all sorts of color combinations. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do exactly the same with the little beads that are left. All right. So this is going to be just basically what's left, which is two small, and then 3 medium, and then 3 large. 3 extra large and 4 extra large. But remember, the combination doesn't really matter what you have. So what I will do is I will going to then take my two groove pins. So you see I have a shorter and a longer one there. And then I'm going to add a 20 gauge wire. So this is a stronger wire here, just as I said, where they naturally meet. I'm going to add a 20 gauge wire. Again, just see these spin around a little bit. And you can make that however long you want. I'm just gonna, when I get to where the 24 gauge wire, the longer 24 gauge wire, I'm just gonna trim it there. Because usually you wouldn't do the final trim. Remember, in video 3, I'm gonna show you using these on cakes and things. I will explain about trimming and, you know, things like that, extending stems on there. So you see how you have this very sort of nice sort of organic look. So this is your, as I say, your pearl type of one, the string of pearls, the bead type of succulent. So next I'm going to show you how we color this and finish it off. So for the coloring, there's lots of different color options. Of course, you have a very neutral pale lime base, so you could go brighter or darker. So it depends really what the color you're going to put this with, what other succulents, what other flowers, potentially time of year, the bride, the client, you know. Anyway, I'm going to use, on this particular one, I'm going to use an apple green. So I'm going to use apple green. I would suggest putting gloves on for this. Often I don't wear gloves because I'm just doing small projects, but because we're actually going to handle this, you're going to get green all over your hands otherwise. And you can also, if you want to, color them as 2 separate pieces and then put them together afterwards, you can do, but this is not really fragile, a fragile product. So what I normally do is just sort of lay onto a paper towel, onto a napkin like this, and I'm going to just go over the visible back part of the pieces here. So you're just going to go over what you can basically see. And that's just going to, and you're also going to brush this onto the floral tape because we want everything to sort of have that same sort of match of color. Okay. So I usually do that on the back first. And then what I do is I just almost like opening up the individual beads or pearls. And then I'm just going to brush this over the top. And it doesn't have to be a completely solid coloring either. I mean, it can be, because you want to, you get this nice natural look. So you're just going to give the foundation. So this could be a lime green, it could be an apple green, but it could also be a sort of a darker green. And of course, this also this does come in the colors like I used on the first video. So you get them in those eucalyptus sage colors, which looks really nice with mauves and pinks and peaches and colors like that. So, you know, like all the succulents, as I showed in video 1 in the introduction, there are so many varieties, and it's really almost, if you can make this in any color you wish. And of course you could add a pink accent or a sort of like the Ondina rose color. You could add a purple onto this, you know, so there's a great way to add an accent color. But you see, I'm just using it on my hand, and this is the easiest way to do this, to dust it, because they're on soft wires, and the actual main stem is soft as well. All right, so just sort of have a look so that you've got the color in onto the pieces there. Okay. And you're going to, as I said, make sure that you get the green color on the floral tape, all right, in between. And also you can do that on the stem as well. So you can do that about halfway down the stem. This will be going to be steamed in a minute. Of course, that could go back into the container. And I'm going to change out, I'm going to use here a moss green. All right, so this is a sort of a darker green. I'm going to use a flat brush, and I'm literally just going to sort of rub this over the top. So just not load too much color on the brush, but I'm just brushing over the top of the, so this will just give a little bit of a sort of a two-tone effect. So almost the tips of them are going to be a sort of a slightly darker green. But you could go more of a bluey green, could do as a forest green. I mean, so really it just depends on what you want it to do. Okay, so just gonna liven that up. I'm just gonna put moss green on the top part of the stem because it's usually a little bit darker going into the pot. And then I'm gonna take some pale chocolate. Now this is the chocolate I used in the first video with, this has got obviously corn flour or cornstarch in it. I'm just gonna add a little bit of chocolate there, just at this top stem. I'm just going to come about halfway down the stem with it. So it's a slightly darker green, you see? And now at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to steam this. So you will bring in a steamer. And you can obviously take your gloves off here. So I'm going to steam this. So we're going to give it a really good steam here. So make sure that you steam everything because it's going to give you the nice color. This is for sugar, all right, sugar base. You're going to use the steaming technique, but you're going to give it a good steam because obviously you're going to get all the pieces. And as I discussed in the first episode or first video, if this was air drying clay, you would just spray it rather than steaming it because steaming does no good because air drying clay is porous. So you're just going to spray it with an unscented hairspray, just an inexpensive hairspray, usually like a pound store or dollar store type of stores usually have this. But just as I say, spray generously. And what that does, that sets the powder, all right? And then once you have done that, then you're going to glaze these. Now there are two options. So first of all, in sugar, all right, we can use a spray lacquer. All right, the spray lacquer, which I talked about in the first video, you're just going to best to take this outside or in a box or something on a protected surface. Do not spray this in your sink or on your table because it'll ruin it, but you can just spray that just lightly over the surface, all right? And that will, as I said, give a sort of a natural look to them, a little bit of shine. You could also use like a leaf glaze. This is diluted confectioner's glaze, so many companies sell this. And you could just obviously use a brush and brush over those. Now, if you're doing it with the brush method, what you need to make sure that the berries are not stuck together so that they're actually just separated when you do that. And even when you spray them, it's best to make sure that they're completely open because then you can spray them, let them dry, and then you can put them back together again. So that will be in sugar, so either a brush on glaze, leaf glaze, or as I say, spray lacquer. And then for air drying clay, you can of course use spray glaze. You can buy a craft spray glaze to spray over those, or you can also use, I use in a lot of my personal projects and when I teach classes on air drying clay, I really like this Sculpey product. It's called Satin Glaze and it's basically looks like milk. It goes on opaque but dries clear. This is a brush on and this is really good for, as I said, air drying clay. They do a gloss one as well, which you'd use for say holly berries and really shiny things. But the Satin Glaze, so that will give you a comparable, they will be comparable look. This is a craft product. This is obviously a sugar craft product. And as I said, this is obviously for sugar craft. Now you can also use a spray lacquer. Some people use this on air drying clay. As I said, you can also use, of course, a craft version of a spray lacquer. The craft versions usually have a very, very strong smell. So definitely, as I said, do that in a vented area or outside. But as I said, I find the Sculpey one pretty user-friendly. I've tried many different ones for my classes and things. So I like this one. And as I said, that's the glaze one. So I'm just going to go outside and spray that and I will be right back to show you it finished. So here you can see the finished succulent. You know, normally when you if it's dried, you're just going to bend at an angle here. So then obviously if it's going into a pot or wired with other sugar flowers. So remember, this is quite a bright green I've shown you. The other drop pearl I'm going to show you in a darker green. But of course, this would depend on, as I said, the client or obviously colors you're going to do as to what color green you want to make this in. So you could start off with obviously a pale lime, but you could also do a moss color base. And here we have the, as I said, the bead or a string of pearls succulent. So now we're going to move on to the drop pearl variety. So this basically is sort of like more a drop pearl shape. It's got marks on the top of it. So it's sort of similar, but quite a bit different. I'm going to do this in a sort of a moss green color. And this is going to be made in the cavity here. All right, so the cavity, again, there are 5 cavities. And with all of these, of course, you know, you can depend on if you were doing a smaller cake, you just use 3 smaller, or a bigger cake, you just use 3 larger. But I'm showing you all 5 sizes because it's nice to have the graduation. So this is made similar to I do my NL pine cones by Katie Sue Designs, some of my other things, where we're going to do 2 halves because obviously of the veining in here and so getting that nice shape and matching up. But whereas things like the pine cones, we usually make 1 half, let it dry, and then make the second half. We do them both at the same time. All right. Now, so this is the mold we're going to use. And in your, obviously, when you're making this, we're going to use, I'm going to use a foliage green. So what I actually did here is I've used foliage and dark green mix. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is pre-colored paste for flowers and things. So this is a foliage green, this is a dark green. And so I have like a holly green, and I've used equal amounts of this, and 1-to-1 ratio. And so I use a number 12 small of each. So on the size guide, I've used a number 12 small of foliage green, number 12 small of holly leaf green, and that will make this more of a sort of a mossy green. Okay, so this is the color that I will be actually using. All right. But again, this could be the lime green, it could be any color green you want to. As with all the succulents, you have lots of options there. Now, as far as in for air drying clay, you would make 2 batches, all right? You'd make 2 custom batches of moss green using a measuring mold. So these are some of the obviously customized colors I developed for the chart. And you can see here, this is the moss green, all right? So this is the moss green color, and you see that matches the sugar. So I've given you a substitute for air drying clay to the sugar, and that, as I said, matches that color exact, all right? So that is made from, you use, obviously you're doing a double recipe or double batch of this. So you would do 2 number 1 whites, 2 number 2 yellows, 2 number 5 blues, and 2 number 7 magentas. All right, and that will give you a little bit more than you need for this project, but 1 batch is not enough, 2 is obviously too much. But if you're coloring air drying clay or sugar from, meaning from scratch, from just white paste, you'll need about 25 grams or a number 14 size. Remember, the air drying clay you don't do in scaled weight, because you use it in volume, which will be the same as sugar, because obviously air drying clay is about 1/4 of the weight. So we've got our paste ready. So then we're gonna talk about the wires. So you're going to do exactly the same as we did for the previous succulent, the bead succulent. And that is going to be to cover 6 wires with 1/4 width tape, cut each of them in 6. Now, slightly difference here. We're going to, the wires are for the bead style. And then what we want is we want 17 of these wires. So I'm just going to show you a couple of each, all right? So 17 of these wires, so 17 total, are going to have a 5mm hook. But here, the hook, rather than open hook, is going to be a closed hook, all right? Because this is a little skinnier. So 17 of the wires, of the 36 wires, you will take your hook here like this, fold it over and squash it, all right? So it's a closed hook. So you see it's closed, just finish it over your fingers. So it's a closed hook as opposed to an open hook that we did on the bead type one, the round ones, like the pearls, all right? So 17 of those would be like that. And then the rest are going to have 3mm closed hooks, because when we can see the small one, they're very tiny, all right? This is a lot smaller than the smaller size of the previous succulent. So what we do is on the smaller ones there, we just need, as I said, a 3mm hook. So on those ones, the rest, and just obviously keep them separate. So it's just going to be about 3 millimeters. All right, so it's really tiny and just almost like about the width of the, if you have needle nose pliers like this, the width of those, and fold them over and squash them like that. So you see it's just a smaller, like a little 3 millimeter hook, about the size like we use for Lily Valley and things on the filler flower mold. All right, so those are our wires ready. And then I'm going to, when I come back, I'm going to explain a little bit about how we're going to do this, because a bit of a different way we do this, and show you how we measure out the paste. So we're going to do this in reverse. I'm going to show you starting from the largest to the smallest. The smallest two, we do the small and medium a little bit differently, but this large, the extra large, the extra large, and the large, we're going to do like in 2 pieces. All right, now we're going to use a little bit more of a scientific approach or a mathematical approach to this, and that we're going to, because we have to measure out the paste that we need. And I'm showing you a quicker way. If you watch my winter foliage mold, like I measure paste and then I cut it into, for example, 12 pieces. But we want this to be a little bit more accurate. Now, if you actually made an extra large one, half filled this mold, it will weigh 0.5 of a gram, all right? And we're going to actually make 9 extra large. So that means they're made in 2 halves. So we need 1 gram for each of these particular pieces, all right? So one of these weighs 1 gram of paste. So that means we need to measure off 9 grams. So if you have a scale, and this is it's not a necessity, but I use this sort of a lot of time for cake and for different things for teaching. But this is a high precision scale, which means this scale is different to a normal kitchen scale, that it will actually do like 0.5 of a gram, 0.7 of a gram. Here you see 1 gram. So it's very, very accurate. All right, it's more of a pharmaceutical, but generally when ordering this, like on Amazon or any sort of site, just put high precision scale. This is a Scally brand, but there are many, many brands. But this is very, very accurate, all right, because a normal scale go from 1 gram to 2 grams. Now, if you don't have a digital scale, you're going to use an 11 large. So you'd measure off a number 11 large. It's 1/3, 1/4 below, 3/4 above. All right, but if you have a scale, now this particular one here is as I said, is actually just 9 grams, but it's just, you see how it's going to go. It's going to go at 8.4, but you see it's very, very accurate. And you see, you just put a little, and then that will take it to 9 grams. All right, but it's just showing you, as I said, different approaches to doing things like this. Now, when we're going to do the same number of, so we're going to do 9 of the extra large, 8 of the extra large, 7 of the large, 6 of the medium, and 5 of the small. And we're going to do reverse, all right? Just like on the previous succulent, we're going to have 1 wire over, so we're making actually 35. I've made the sizes, the number of components the same, so it's easier to understand what we're doing. Now, what we're going to do is going to put a little bit of vegetable fat shortening into this. All right, now what we're going to do is going to roll it into a sausage using the Flexi Scraper. It wants to be 90 millimeters in length. All right, so when you're making the sausage here, this is a really, really good way to get an even sausage. You see, so make sure that your ends are even as well. So you have a perfect sausage there, all right? Okay, and what we're going to do is going to make that 90 millimeters long. So you're just going to obviously roll it a little bit more. So it wants to be 90 millimeters, just a little tiny bit here. But this just gives you an even sausage. All right, so there we are. So here we have the, all right, so 9 centimeters. Now, what we're going to do is then we're going to mark into 9 sections at the 10 millimeter marks. All right, so what I'm going to do is just use I'm using a mini knife directly above top here. I would just mark. This is a quicker way than having to measure off 18 number 6 small balls of paste, all right? And then what I'm going to do is going to take this off, and then I will then mark in between those. So I'm actually dividing this into 18 pieces of paste. Now, once you've seen the technique, if ever you're doing multiples of things, basically if you have a high precision scale, like whatever flower you're making, you can weigh obviously what that size is in the size guide, you know, from your mold take it out, measure how many grams it is. And then also that helps also with knowing how much to color, because if you were doing a custom color for certain flowers, then you want to make sure you have enough. All right, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to then just cut these off. And you're just going to cut these. So this is going to be cut into obviously like 18 pieces. All right. Now, some of them might vary a little bit, particularly the ends, and don't worry about, I'm going to show you how to do that. But anyway, so you then put these 18 pieces under there. So this is just a quicker way of teaching you how to sort of measure paste and also how to calculate how much paste you need. And all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to mark that. So this will yield 16 number 6 smalls, all right? So the alternative thing to do is if you're only making a few of these, you could just measure a number 6 small that goes through the hole and then just make 12 of those or as many you want. It's just I'm showing you this is quicker for production work. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take the cavity and here I'm going to take the cavity, all right? Just going to work the paste. And this one, you might, especially the small ones, because they move a little bit, I would suggest on this one, just put a little tiny bit, of vegetable fat shortening into here, minute amount, will just help to hold it. All right, so what we're going to do is going to press that into the mold, and you can press in with your cosmetic sponge, but you see that's going to, as I said, give you the little size you need. Now, if you might have 1 or 2 that are a little bit oversized, so what you can do is, first of all, use your scraper, press down, that makes sure it's completely level, like how I do my pine cones. And then you can just use your scraper and trim off if you had any excess paste, all right? So that's sort of how we do this. And then once we've done that, press level, trim if needed, using a sawing action with the scraper. You brush the hook with glue, all right? So we're going to use, this will be on the larger hooks, all right? So remember, these will be for the larger ones here. So you're going to brush the glue onto the hook. And this is going to go into the insert sideways under the surface. So when you put it in, the hook wants to go in like this way. All right, so it's going in on its side, not on its side. So the hook is on its side. And so you hold it fairly short because it's obviously quite a thin wire. Just going to push that in underneath the surface. Use your fingers just to bring the paste back down and just repress with the scraper. So you see the paste is now literally underneath the surface, the skin of the top. All right, and then what we're going to do is flex the mold and remove. So we flex the mold and you remove that. So you see you have this half piece. All right, and then what we're going to do, I'll show you this one I know is a little bit bigger because it's just at the very end. All right, so if you have one that's a little bit, as I said, just to show you how we do that. So you put that into the mold. All right, so I can see that's a little bit big. So press this in, and then all you then do is just use a sawing action, just saw that down. Also, if paste goes into the little channel where the wire would go, just use your companion tool, just bring that out, okay? But that wants to be, as I said, level. Because remember, if you have 2 level sides, and that's why I don't use my finger, I would use a cosmetic sponge, but now with the new Flexi Scraper, this is wonderful because it means both of your surfaces are level. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take some glue and you're going to brush glue, and it's really important, especially with air drying clay, because air drying clay shrinks about 8 to 10% when it dries. So if you don't get glue all over that surface, what happens is the air drying clay will separate, all right? Now, if it does separate, like I showed on the previous on video number 1, you can just take a little bit of air drying clay, mix with water and fill it in, or put a little air drying clay in and use your finger. But if you make sure the whole of this surface area is covered. So you see what I do now is I'm going to place the second half on the top. Just press gently, so that will secure that. And then you flex the mold and this comes out, and you just, obviously just at the top there, make sure it comes onto the wire. And that gives you your bead. And really you don't have a visible seam there, all right? But again, with air drying clay or with obviously the Flexi paste, you can use a wet finger, but generally, as I said, if you make sure there's glue on both the surfaces, it will sit there, all right? So it looks a bit like an avocado. And you've got these lines on the top of it. All right, so that's sort of how we would do that. And then of course that would just go into the convoluted foam. So like we did on the previous one, you're just going to lay that onto the convoluted foam like that. All right. And that's how you would make the extra, extra large. All right. Now, so as you can see here, these are going to be the 9 of the extra, extra large. All right. And these are going to hang a little bit more. And so as I said, they're going to be, that's sort of the first stage. Now then you would continue. All right. So once you've done that, so we're going to then move on. For the extra large, repeat with 4.8 grams, number 10 small, making it into an 80 millimeter. So I'm just going to show you this. So this one, what you would do is you take some paste. So this is where obviously the digital scale works really well, because you actually want 4.8 grams here. So you can see, so 3, see, so it's really, really accurate. All right, so you see it's just going, don't breathe too hard close to it, because it obviously will change it. But you see it's obviously very, very sensitive. All right, so that's 4.8 grams. The rest is there. It's just borderline, so just need a little tiny bit more. There we go. So 4.8 grams. But this will just give you obviously exactly really the paste you need each time. Sorry, the Milo bags are a little bit crackly, but they work really, really well. All right, so just to show you the concept, all right, once you understand this. So this time, so we're going to make, all right, we're going to make 8 of the next size down. So that means we need 16 halves, all right? So here, so then what we're going to do, so for the extra large, we need 4.8 grams or a 10 small, making this time into an 80 millimeter sausage, all right? Because, you know, each centimeter or is going to be divided in half, so giving you 2 pieces. So just show this the last time. All right, so this is going to be 8. So when you get sort of close to the sort of size you need it to be, you can just level it up with your scraper. If you make it too big, obviously you can just literally, and then you see you're going to use your little scraper. This will level this out. Now remember, try and make the ends of these square. All right, so that's 80 millimeters. And then you're going to just put that on to there. All right, so that's going to be, just make sure that there we go. And then again, you're going to see, you're going to mark here where obviously these are. Take this off. And then again, you now are going to cut these. You see, you're going to cut these, and then obviously each of them will be cut in half. So then this is going to give you 16. This is going to yield 16 pieces of paste, all right? So obviously put those under your pot. I'll just show you that one more time. And so this is going to be for the next one, the extra, this is the extra large size. All right, and this will be, as I said, number 5 pieces of paste. Alternatively, you could just measure 16 number 5 balls of paste, all right? So here we're going to take your, so this is going to be, sorry everybody, we have a fly. He was in the first video, he's visiting. So, but you're going to fill that up, just press that in there, make sure that comes down to the bottom so you get that teardrop, but you see it's going to be level. And if you were at the reverse of that, for example, you cut it, the sausage a little bit wrong and you have one that's too, you can just take a little bit of excess paste and you can just sort of fill it in, like almost a little tiny bit fill in on the top, because you want to get that level. So remember, these are still the large hooked wires. All right, so here you're going to, remember, go at an angle. You're going to push the hook in. All right, so it's sort of sitting on its side like this. Then just use your fingers, cover this over. All right, and once you have done that, you're going to flex the mold, take this out. This is going to give you a half pearl. Now these could be used on cake. These would look beautiful. We could do like drop pearls. So if you just made these, and there you could take like your fondant or sugar paste you cover the cake with and modify your sugar paste or fondant with some Tylose powder just to firm it up a little bit. And then of course you could use it, put them half pearls around the cake or on the bottom of a cake. So that could also be used as a really nice decoration on a cake. So then we take the second half. Now, the reason we're doing the second half straight away is that we don't need to let this dry because it's quite small, okay? When we do things like, you know, my pine cone, the reason I prefer to make the first half is because it's quite detailed and raised if you try and stick the second half on straight away. But when you're using air drying clay, because air drying clay, whenever you use a double-sided mold like this, where you're making two, my poppy seed head, my pine cones, my toadstool stems, for example, you always need to do one and the second one straight away. So what I'm doing is will be as you would do air drying clay, but also in this case, sugar. All right, because air drying clay, because as I explained, it dries, it shrinks a little bit. If you made one half and then you let it dry for 15-20 minutes and came back to do the second half, that's going to have shrunk and it's not going to fit. Okay, so with air drying clay, a little tip there is you always do the second one. So remember, if you have any excess paste, you know, just trim that off and just keep those little scraps, because then if you need to fill in any other, because some of them might be the reverse of being a little bit. And you remember you can use your cosmetic sponge here as well. And then you're going to brush glue over your surface. Make sure you brush that to the edge. Because PVA, air drying clay, you know, we use PVA glue. Air drying clay sticks to itself, but that is not enough, because if you didn't put PVA glue there, this was air drying clay, they're going to separate. All right, you see how I'm just lining this up. All right, just gently press there. And then you flex your mold, take it out. Just make sure the edges are together, and then just press that like that. And that's going to give you your, and that will be the medium size. That would be, sorry, that's the extra large. So here we've done the extra large, and then obviously extra large, and now the extra large, all right? Now we would move on to, I'm going to just skip the medium one. Sorry, for the large one. So for the large one, which is the next size down, which would be this one here, I would use 2.1 grams of paste, which is a 7 large, and make into a 70mm sausage, and then that will give you 14 because we'll make 7 of those. All right, so roll it into 70mm sausage, cut it into 7 centimeters or 70mm, and then cut each one in half. All right. And that is going to be used for the ones. So those three, the extra large, the extra large, and the large, I'm going to do by scale weight. If you have a digital scale, high precision scale, or as I said, to show you those. And then when I come back, I'm going to show you how we do the medium and the small, which are going to be done in really more of a traditional way. For the medium, we're going to measure 6 number 4 smalls. So this we're going to do in a traditional method. All right, so we're going to make a number 4 small. All right, so that's a number 4 that goes through the hole, and you make another 5 balls of the paste of this, put it underneath your little pot. Now these are going to be on the hooks that have the 3mm hooks on here. And so we're going to use as I said, the 3mm hooks, the smaller hooks on the 3 smaller ones, the small, medium, and large will have the smaller hooks. So if you do the extra large first, and then the extra large, that will use the bigger hooks on there. So we're going to take your paste. Now here we're going to put a little bit of glue onto your hook, and so we're going to just put a little bit of glue onto your hook there, and we're going to put this into the little ball of paste. Use a little bit of flour cornstarch, mold that around, and basically you're just going to make it into a drop pearl shape, like almost like the bud of a lot of flowers. All right, so we're going to make this shape, and then what we're going to do is going to be putting this into the mold. Now we're going to use a cosmetic sponge, the thin end of the cosmetic sponge, because that just puts a delicate pressure on. It's better than using your finger, because you'll take the veining off. And so what you do is you place that into the channel. All right, so you see how that's going to go into the channel here. All right, and going to just press gently with the cosmetic sponge, the thin end of the cosmetic sponge, just at the base there, all right? And then you turn it over, and then you turn it into the other side, and then just press that again. Now the little bit of vegetable shortening fat in there will hold that in place. All right, and that's going to give you your little center one. Now it's going to have a more of a subtle veining because of the way we've done it, but that's also, as I said, will they be like in real life, all right? And then that, of course, would go into your foam. And then the last one, the small one, is going to be done, the small one will be done with a number 3, and I'll show you that, and that will be done exactly the same way. So you're going to make that into a little ball. So this is number 3 size, and you go, but you can see this is why we need smaller hooks on those smaller projects. All right, and this is the number 3. So we push this in, going to pinch it around the bottom just to secure that. All right, you can use your fingers like that, but just make it into that sort of basic shape. And then we're going to put that into the mold. So it just sits in the mold like that. Just going to just gently press. Don't press too hard because you don't want to squash it. But if you squash it a little bit, don't worry, because we're going to remold it. Going around to the other half and just squash it. And then take it out of the mold, and then you can just reshape it. And you're just going to get those subtle lines on the bottom. And that will be your, you can see here, this is going to be your medium and your small, okay? So we've made all the components, all right? So once you've made all the components, so remember 9 of the extra large, and then we have 8 of the extra large, 7 of the large, 6 of the medium, and 5 of the small. Just like the previous succulent, we're going to let these dry and we'll be ready for assembly. So the drop pearls we're going to do in 3 groupings instead of 2 on the previous succulent. So for the first grouping, I want 2 small, 2 medium, 3 large, 4 extra large, and 4 extra large, all right? So those are going to be done exactly the same way as we did the previous succulent, all right, just to make it a little bit easier to understand how they go together. So just move those out. So usually just put them in little groups. So what we're going to do is just like we did before, we're going to take, now the difference here on these, that there is really no visible stem, all right? So you're taping close to the stem, whereas obviously the previous succulent was a little bit more open. You can see the stems are, the actual little pearls are right to the stem. So you're going to do, again, about 2 centimeters, about 3/4 of an inch. Take your 1/4 width floral tape. We're just going to start to tape, but tape tightly to that second one. And then we're going to put in the 28 gauge wire. So the 28 gauge wire goes right up against the bottom here. All right, and just kind of come down just a little ways. And then the next ones, so when you tape them in, you just position them so they're sort of positioned right to the stem. So when you come over with the tape, you see the tape is going to be right at the bottom of the stem, okay? You're going to come down, and they're a little bit more formal in that they're just sort of in a row. But so when you actually bring the tape round, just obviously strap the tape up to the base of here, okay? And just going to come around. So you see I've got the, so now I've got the small and medium. Now I'm going to go on now to the large. Obviously just space out a little bit. So this will be more like when we do in Flower Pro Volume 1, when I did, for example, the Forget-Me-Nots. This is pretty much how we do the Forget-Me-Not buds or Lily of Valley. They always sort of sit fairly formal. And but these are going to go, as I say, quite tight to the piece here. And just going to come around like this. And just going to, so this is this will be the medium ones. And then, you know, you can be able to twist these as well. So if you have a sort of a split or a visible seam. Now remember, in the first video I showed how you could take, for example, with flour paste or I say flexi paste, you could take a little bit of that product and mix it with water, and then you can just fill in and use your finger, and that will make it fill in. With air drying clay, you can just actually put a little tiny piece of air drying clay and a wet finger on there as well. But once this is glazed, it's not really going to be noticeable. But you see, then I'm just going to start now on this is the large, and then we move on to the next large here. but you really want to get them nice and tight, all right, so that they're going to sort of sit into place, you see, like this. So just showing you two different sort of shapes of the same sort of type of succulent. So, you know, this one is the drop pearl, and then you have the one that's more like the bead. But these could also look really nice, you know, in a spray with traditional flowers, for example, roses and flowers like that, because it sort of gives a nice shape and sort of interest. And at that point there, all right, just as we did on the previous one, when you have finished the large before you, the extra large before you put the extra large in, we add a 24 gauge wire here. So we're just extending that with a 24 gauge wire. Remember, we're using quarter width tape for all of this assembly, because if not, it's just going to get too bulky. And here you have the so we're going to just, this will be the second one. There's the third. This is the fourth one. Okay, now once you get the fourth one in, so you see this is going to be your longer spray, then we can, again, just like we did before, we can now tape down to the bottom. Now on the previous one, I mentioned you can also color and glaze individually and then put them together. Also remember, you could, like the first one I showed you, you could actually dust them individually before you, and dust them and glaze them and then put them together. So there's many, many options. All right, this one I'm going to show, because I've got three, I'm going to show you these colored separately, and then I will put them together. Now, the second grouping, which is going to be the medium size one, that is going to be 2 small, 2 medium, 2 large. Then we have 3 extra large and 3 extra large. And the small grouping I have here is what's left, which basically is 1 small, 2 medium, 2 large, 1 extra large, and 2 extra large. So you see these will go in together to make 3, a sort of a triple version of the duo that we had in the previous one. So next we're going to do the coloring. So for the drop pearl, I'm going to actually make a pearlized green. I'm going to use a color foliage green. You could use a moss green. Again, you could do this with eucalyptus. So when I showed in the video 1, I showed you in making the pointed succulent, I used the pearl dust white mixed together, so it gives a pearlescent sheen. This is also an excellent way to do that sort of effect, and you can do this for all sorts of type of foliage. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 1 part of the pearl. All right, so this is just pearl dust. So about 1 part of that and about 3 parts of green. All right, so just a 1:3 ratio. I'm using a little spoon. This is a little spoon set, which has got a smidge and a pinch. And you can just do that with by eye, but it's basically 3 parts green to 1 part the pearl. Okay, so 3 to 1. And then what we will do is you will mix this together. Of course, you can mix this in a little pot as well. So you're going to mix the white pearl with the green. And what they actually will do, it will give us sort of a pearlescent green color. So this is another way you could do things like eucalyptus. But as I said, you can mix this in a little pot and then just keep that. So it's 1 part pearl to 3 parts green. And you see, when you brush it on, it's going to have that sort of pearlescent look to it, you see? And but it will be actually more tonal. You don't need to put gloves on this because this is sort of more basic. So you're just going to brush over the visible on 1/2. Then you turn it over. Just going to brush that on the other half there, like that. Okay, so you're just going to brush sort of all over with that pearlescent. So of course you could put this in a little container and then just keep that when you're doing this. Then I'm going to take some chocolate brown. So with some chocolate brown, just going to use just full strength chocolate brown this is. What I'm going to do is just going to do that towards the top of the So just after that large one, so you see how most of the green will sort of come into the brown color. So you see, you've got the brown, and you can do the green into the brown. Okay, and then we're just going to take these and bend them. I will put the, doesn't matter which side you do, it's going to do medium, and I will do the small one. Remember, you have to calculate, like when you're doing this on a cake, you know, how if it's going to sort of trail down the side of the cake, sort of how it sits. We take the 20 gauge wire. So this is a 20 gauge wire here. Now this one I'm going to steam only, because when you have things with pearl dust on them, like the, for example, the third succulent I showed on the first video, the pointed succulent, I just steamed it when I had the pearl dust on, all right? And on things like eucalyptus and a lot of my Flower Pro products, I often just steam. Because succulents, some succulents have just a slight luster, some are more shiny, so it does vary between variety. And then I'm just going to trim that off there. And of course you can just take these, they will have this nice, again, nice organic sort of flow to it. So you see that sort of trail down like this. I'm just going to put a little bit more brown. So where that all meets the top, I'm just going to brush the brown onto here. So the pearl one I showed on that on the first part of this video, the bright green one, that was really just to show you there's lots of options with colors, all right? And you know, some succulents are very vibrant, but a lot of them are these more muted, yeah, eucalyptus colors and things like that. And so really, as I said, it depends on what you're going to mix them with. It would be tropical flowers or things like that. You can of course change the color. Let me get rid of my piece of paper here. All right, now this one I'm just going to steam only. All right, so we're just going to steam this, or if this was craft, if this was air drying clay, you just give it a really good spray with hairspray, and that will obviously set the powder, because like, for example, that would set the powder on the stem. But just going to put a little bit of brown into here, and you're just going to just steam over this. Just be careful you don't burn yourself. All right, and then the steam. Now remember, you can also use a tea kettle, but hold it a little bit away. And of course, a lot of tea kettles, electric tea kettles, have an auto switch off. You can also use a pan of water and just put generally a little bit of water in the pan, put some foil on the top, aluminum foil, make some holes with a bamboo skewer and ice pick so the water will come out steam. If you have an electric rice cooker, when you cook dinner, you can basically just also steam your flowers, multitask at the same time. So here you see you have the, as I said, the drop pearl succulent. All right, and you can see that obviously the difference between the two is obviously this one is a lot brighter. But as I said, that would go with a lot like tropical flowers, or obviously with certain color palettes, you know, maybe in the summertime, bright oranges and colors like that. This is a lot more sort of fall, autumn, winter time, or when a bride was using more sort of like say a rustic wedding, that's sort of the color palette. And of course, these are interchangeable as well. You could do this in a bright green, you could do the other one. But there is your, as I said, your drop pearl succulent. So I'm now going to show you some little miniature succulents, actually just like a micro and some smaller varieties of succulents. Now, as you can see, succulents can be made. These are all made in the mold, all right? And but I'm also going to talk about, there are some other my Flower Pro molds that work for a similar sort of concept. Now, when you're doing these, for example, let's say for a doll's house, or you're doing them for an air drying clay, you could make little succulent earrings. Obviously, you could make, for a doll's house, you could make little succulents to go by the door. So there's lots of things you can do there. So things like, for example, the Katie Sue, this is a garden accessories. It has two sizes of flower pots. you can make the two halves of the flower pot in like a terracotta clay color. And of course, then you could just put this onto a wire instead of doing this onto spaghetti or angel hair pasta. And of course, you could put those and you could have sort of 2 or 3 of those in a little pot by the door of the doll's house. So for obviously doing air drying clay, you can just use wires and just use obviously the technique and I'm showing you the size. Now, in video 3, I'm going to show you using the succulents how to arrange them on a cake, but I'm also going to show how to use them for little tiny confections, like for example, when you do cake pops, when we do macarons, we do mini cupcakes, we do cupcakes, verines and things like that. You can obviously do these on an edible support system, which is done on spaghetti or angel hair pasta. Now this is angel hair pasta, which is about half the thickness of spaghetti. And so the 2 smaller ones, the micro and the mini, I'm going to do on angel hair pasta. And then when I move on to the larger size one, which will be this size, which is still small, I'm going to use spaghetti. Now in, for example, an Asian grocery store, supermarket, you can buy obviously also udon noodles and Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Japanese noodles that can be thicker than this. And when you go to a specialty store, spaghetti comes in different sizes, also thicker spaghetti as well. All right, these are just the 2 standard angel hair pasta and spaghetti. But as I said, it's a very useful technique to use because it means it's a totally edible support system. And as I will show on video 3, when you put these into a cupcake or onto a cookie or onto a macaron, the thing is that the stem is then totally edible. So a customer can eat the whole thing. They can eat the cupcake and obviously make the, as I said, because the spaghetti is just a little bit crunchy, but totally edible. But for craft, you can just use wire. Now, when you are making these, of course, these are the little, as I said, the micro, the mini, and the small I'm going to show you, all right? You can see the sort of size of that is actually smaller than my thumbnail. And, but you can, of course, also make like larger succulents. So like when I showed in video 1, I showed making the pointed succulent. All right, this was made on a wire, but you can make the same center on a piece of spaghetti, exactly the same size. So this could be a totally edible succulent. And that would be a good size for a larger cupcake, or obviously, for example, on a cake, if you want to make an edible support system. All right. Now, of course, you really can't do wired petals because wired petals, will not be not edible. But as I said, a lot of the sort of more basic succulents you can make in this way. And then also, of course, when you're making succulents like, for example, this is the elongated one, you could make the center on spaghetti and then you could do the little leaves here. And instead of doing them on wires, you just would press them into the mold, shape them, and you would attach them to the outside while they're soft and use pieces of sponge in between them. So you could totally do that as an edible succulent. It just wouldn't have the obviously flexibility of being able to move the wires. But they're fun to do. And so if you were doing a wedding for a client, for example, where you may be doing the wedding cake, you may make succulents, wired succulents, but then this will be really cute to offer as on little desserts or pastries, petit fours, macarons, and things like that. Also, of course, for cookies and things as well, you can use this. Now, so I'm going to show you the first 2. First one, which is going to be the micro one. Those are both going to be on angel hair pasta. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my angel hair pasta and I'm going to use a 40 millimeter piece of angel hair pasta, about 1.5 inches. So you can just break that. All right, and then when I do the next one, I'm going to do the same. All right, but this is good for the really tiny ones because just like using a thinner wire for a project. All right, now what we're going to do is going to take a number 2 ball of paste. So we're going to take a number 2. I'm going to do this obviously in the foliage green I use for the second, the pointed, the elongated succulent. Okay, number 2 size. I'm going to just put a little bit of glue onto the end of that. So just dip that into some glue. But as I said, if this was air drying clay, you could use like a piece of 26 gauge wire, the same length. All right, there's no need to hook that. Just going to put that on the end of the wire. You're going to make that into a little, like almost like a match head, and you roll into a sausage about 6 millimeters long. All right, so just a little bit longer than 5 millimeters. All right, so 6 millimeters there, which actually is 1/4 inch. All right, so it fits within 1/4 inch. And then we're going to take the succulent. So we're going to take the mold here. And we're going to do this in that triple one. All 3 of these are done in the same one. That is the smaller triple one I used. So again, so all we're going to do here Now you can hold it with your left hand or your right hand, whatever you find easiest. And what you're going to do is just going to sort of push that into the bottom of the mold, and then with your other hand, you're just going to flex the mold like that. And so what that's going to do is going to give you a little miniature center. All right. And so you can see this could be used also for different flower centers and other things as well. Now that will need to dry. I've just got this in a small foam block, and then obviously because the spaghetti, you don't want to sort of stick that in and break it. You can just make little holes in a piece of foam block, and you just would put there to dry. They don't take long to dry, and of course you could do that in a food dehydrator. So this is one that I have already dry. And then what we're going to do is going to take 2 No. 4 smalls, and we're going to brush the little smallest 6-part. Now these 2 elements on the mold I didn't use in video 1 or video 2, all right, of the first part of video 2. So this is the one I'm going to use. It's a little tiny one. There's a 6 petal flab. Remember, in the video 1 we used the one with a little nipple in here. All right, so this is the one we're going to use here. So we're going to take, these are No. 4 small size balls of paste. We're going to put a little bit of release in here, some vegetable shortening vegetable fat. So you measure off 2 No. 4 smalls. So of course, if you were making 12 of those, you make 24 of those. And then you're going to brush the smallest 6-part cavity, press the paste in the mold, remove and place on cosmetic sponge. Now remember, the easiest way to do this is just to sort of press it in and literally just press it with your cosmetic sponge, so we'll come to the end, all right? And just sort of rub with your finger like that. Now, the thing is if you're thinking of making these, of course, if you had to do, say, like 100 of these for a wedding, you have to think about investment of time. But these are very quick. I'm not really doing anything to them, extra additional veining or cupping or anything like that. I'm just leaving them as they are, because you have to think. Now, most of these would only take about 2 minutes each to make, so it's pretty quick. And so anyway, you just place that onto the cosmetic sponge with the hole in there. We're going to just, once we've done that, you're going to cup the center with the ball end of companion tool. So just cup the center like that. And then going to put some glue onto here. So I'm just going to use a bit glue. So just a little bit of glue about halfway down there. And then with your, this is the dry one, just push that through. All right. You just push that through there like that. And then all I'm going to do is you can use your fingers or companion tool. I'm going to take 3 alternate. So you see I do 3 alternate, and then 3 are just going to sort of stick out at a slight angle. So you see that's the first 3 and the second 3. And then you're going to do that again. Now I've already got one of those ready. Got those here in my Stay Fresh flap. So then you just do another one. Of course, if you were doing, say, 100 of these or 12 or 6 of them, you could, of course, do all the first stage and then the second stage. So this second one, just cup, and then this is just going to be attached. So just a little bit of glue on the outside. And then all you're going to do is thread that through and just going to alternate that so it sits like that. So it just goes in between the pieces. And that will be your little, as I said, the little micro succulent. All right, so very cute. And also that could really sort of double up on a doll's house, almost like as a cabbage. So you could use this for all sorts of types of things. But these could be made in little earrings, people who work in polymer clays and air drying clay, and also, of course, in silver clay. You could do this in the sterling silver clay, so you can make little silver succulent earrings. So very cute ideas. There's a little micro one. Now the mini one there, which I'm going to do in the eucalyptus color, but remember the color can vary. For the mini one, you take No. 3 balls of paste, repeat for the micro, making 10 millimeters long. All right, so this is going to be done with the, using here the sort of the sage with a little bit of blue in it. Just to show that again. And then this one is going to be made a little bit longer. So this wants to be about 10, so this wants to be within the 10 millimeters, all right? So in the 10 millimeters part here. But they dry pretty quick, you know, so it doesn't take long to dry. And then again, you're gonna take the mold. So just remember that technique here, so you can hold it in your right hand or your left hand, whichever you find easiest. I'm right-handed, so I found it's easier in my left hand, but so you're gonna just push it into the bottom of the mold, and then you flex the mold, and then you flex the mold the other way. All right, and it's gonna give you that little triple top, okay? So that would be how you would do this one. Again, I've got one already pre-made. Now this one, we're going to use the other part of the mold that we didn't use in the till now, and that is going to be this part here, which is going to be the propeller one, but it's a skinnier version. Remember yesterday, it's in the first video in part 1, we used obviously this one with a little nipple in it. This is the one that we used in video 1 for the obviously for the pointed succulent. We're going to use the one, the propeller, but a little bit skinnier. All right, and so what we're going to do is you're going to measure off your paste here. So you need number 5 small, so you need 3 of these. And again, I've already done 2 of these, but you put a little bit of vegetable shortening fat into there. Just press in. But see, if you just use your cosmetic sponge and just push this into the mold, it's pretty quick to do. Now, if you should have excess paste, you can just use your little Flexi Scraper, so you can take that off if it sort of comes up from the top of the mold, okay? But so you get this little propeller shape. You're just gonna take that out, all right, like this. I'm gonna put that onto, now this could be used for snowdrops as well, so you can use this for snowdrops. Bittersweet, you can widen it for a little bit for bittersweet, so this can be used for, say, different flowers as well. And then we're going to, once we've done that, you're going to remove, and then you're going to hollow, attach as micro. So you're just gonna hollow the base here. You attach as micro. So we're going to take so you could glue about halfway up. Just going to bring this up here, like that. So the first 3 are going to stick. They stick round like that. Okay, and then you're going to, then you do the second one. So I've already just got some of these ready. So then the second one would be done exactly the same way. You just hollow that. You're going to put your glue about halfway up. And then this next one, so you just push that through the middle. And you position this, so this goes in between those ones. So you see that's going to go in between. So those just sort of like stick out at an angle. So you see how these just go out at an angle. And then you have the last one we're going to do is here. And that's just going to be hollowed. And then you're going to put the glue on here. You can just slide it up. Just the this works well as a support system. So you just sort of alternate those. Just pull that gently, and then those just almost stick straight out. And usually these smaller ones, they don't need to be supported. They're going to just they will just dry fine like that. But you see this little miniature succulents. All right, and then next one I'm going to show you is going to be the small one. Now the small one I'm going to do on spaghetti. So we're going to attach on spaghetti because that's thicker, and this wants to be 50 millimeters, so just a little bit longer. So about 50 millimeters, this one here. And what we're going to do is this one is going to be a number 4 small. So when I designed this mold, I had in mind, you know, to have some little miniature things on as well, because this is a fun way to use this. But as I said, other components that you can make with the mold as well. So you're going to just touch this down, and so this is going to be, so you're going to do it for exactly the same as obviously the small one. So we're going to make that. So here we're going to make that so 10 millimeters long. All right, and then you will again just going into your mold. Just press that in. You can also just use your finger here, like that finger and that finger. See that pops that out, and again you get that perfect little center. All right, if your spaghetti comes out a little bit, just pull it back in. All right, you get a really nice little center. And Then you let that dry, okay, and then you've got one that's dry. Now this one is going to be done, we're going to do this really the same as we did the first part of this, this one here, which is on video 1. So we're really going to make the first part of the inside of the pointed succulent. So we're going to use here. Now this is the one with the nipple in it that we used on video number 1. So you've got it's wider. You see this one is like a propeller, but it's a little bit skinnier. This is the wider one. And so again, you just would put a little bit of vegetable fat in here. And then just press this in. But here it's basically it's all about speed, you know, because really, as I said, you're not spending a lot of time on these because of if you're doing, I said, 100 of them. And that has a little sort of nipple in the center, so you just expose that if you want to, but you can just press that through. All right, so this was, as I say, covered in video 1. And so you see that gives you the first little triple one. And then you're going to just put a little bit of glue on this. And you see, you just thread that through. Now again, you can come, so position that. You see they just come on there like that. So this will give you 3. Now if you wanted to make a smaller one, you could just do like I just did on this propeller one. You could just do 3 like that, and it's going to be about the same size, a little tiny bit wider, but you could just make a sort of a mid-size one there. But I'm showing you a slightly larger one. So you're going to do that will be your first part. And then what we then do is we then use a 6 small. So we're going to use a number 6 small for the 6 load one. So you just take the ball, press it in there like I showed you obviously on this one. And that will give you the next one. So again, you can just put this on. You can cut this or you can just leave it plain if you want. Now when I did this for the actual main succulent in video 1, I obviously worked the edges and I pinched them, which you can do, but that's again adding an extra part to it. And you're just going to put that through. Again, you're just going to line that up so that sort of fits in between. You see? So you could just leave it like that. All right, that could be left like that. Or if you want to make it, you see that's obviously just the mid-size one or the slightly bigger one. And then you can go on, if you want to make the bigger one, you're using then, use a 6 large. So that's going to be 1/4 below and 3/4 above. So just put that onto there. And then we're going to put that just about halfway up on the glue, okay? And then you just sort of alternate those and just pull them up. There's your adorable succulent. Now this one needs supporting, all right? And so here, what you would do is the way I found easiest to do that. You just use, like for example, this is a foldable rack you'd use for canned goods in a cabinet. So what you do is you put a block of styrofoam there, and then you see you can push your styrofoam, your spaghetti can be pushed into there. You see, and that means the succulent is going to then dry. Because wires, wires are easy to do because you can just, you can bend them, but hang them on a hanging rack. But I found that that works well. Now, there are lots of flowers you can make on wire, on spaghetti, like for example, when you do weddings, you know, on cupcakes, macarons and things, you can do a lot of my Flower Pro roses and you know, different flowers, and just use spaghetti or angel hair pasta on smaller projects to obviously allow you to do different size pieces. In the Flower Pro, you know, so just talking about some of my other, obviously Flower Pro, for example, here you've got the calyx of the cherry blossoms or blossoms mold. So again, you could use the little center. So that would be about comparable to the middle size one, you see. So what you could do is you could just do the little center following the mini, and then what you would do, the mini one, you then would do one of those and one of those, all right? Or, you know, so you can do that. And then there's also, for example, things like the wedding foliage. On the wedding foliage, you've got the little leaves of the English boxwood. You could just put those on individual, 3 of those, and then maybe 4 or 5, or 3 and 6. So you could use that, all right? So that can be used for little tiny succulents as well. On my sunflower, again, obviously you've got the daisy here, so you could do 2 of those on a little small one. So that was going to be about sort of comparable to that middle size one. So you do 2 layers with the small daisy calyx. And then of course, you know, like on things like the ultimate filler flower, for example, you could do like the plumeria, the jasmine one, 2 of those. You could do obviously those could go on to there. Bigger one, you could do actually 2 layers of this, and then obviously just attach those. And that would be like, as I said, there are some succulents that have bigger, wider leaves. So they're really a lot of, as I said, fun things you can make with these. As far as finishing these off, you just use exactly the same technique. So for example, like on this one, I could do like I showed you on obviously the drop pearl, just using a little bit of the color, the eucalyptus with some luster, the 3:1 ratio. That again, think of speed as well. So generally using like some pearl dust. And on something like say the little tiny one, all I would do is maybe take a little bit of like the Ondina rose or some plum or sort of a pinky color and just brush across the top. You wouldn't have to sort of brush green all over. And again, the same as this one, you could put some pearl dust onto it because you want to make those, make them quick. And then of course you can just give them a quick, you know, just a quick steam. All right. Now remember, don't steam them too long. And mostly I just steam it like this because you don't want the steam to get for the pasta, because obviously then you're going to have like cooked spaghetti with the steam hitting it. So you want to, but a really cute way to, as I said, finish your obviously little mini succulents. So in video 3, I'm going to be showing you sort of how I'm going to use these on little cupcakes and macarons and some different other ways of using these up, and also some bigger ones on cupcakes. And as I said, also going to show you how we take the succulents that I've made in video 1 and video 2 and how I would usually arrange them and how I would put them onto a cake. So here you can see the finished succulents. Obviously we had the bead or the pearl succulent, and then obviously we had the this one here, which is the sort of nice shape one. Of course, colors can vary. Remember, I explained about I did this one in brighter green just to give you some sort of ideas of color range. But use the internet, you know, so do a search on Google, or as I did an internet search for different varieties of succulents, and it's going to give you lots and lots of ideas for color combinations. And then, of course, I went on to show you the little micro, the mini, and the small succulents that I'm going to be using in video 3. So I hope you've enjoyed this second video on using my Flower Pro by Katie Sue Designs Ultimate Succulent Mold. We'll have a lot of fun making this. And remember, join me in video 3 where I'm going to show you how we use the succulents, wire them, put them onto cakes, also show you how to use them on little tiny confections as well. Till next time, sweet wishes, bye!